Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's Connect Home USA webinar series. Today's topic is Lifeline lowers internet costs for low-income residents. Together with Dina Lehman-Kim, HUD's Connect Home USA Program Manager, and myself, Janelle Beverly, we are your hosts for today. Before Dina introduces our exciting speakers, I have a few housekeeping items. Our speakers will share their knowledge for approximately 15 to 20 minutes each. At the end of the session, we will reserve 15 to 20 minutes for questions and answers. You may ask your questions in two ways. In the right-hand navigation panel, you will see a hand-shaped icon. If you would like to verbally share your question, select the hand icon and I will unmute your line in order of the question received. Or, if you would like to send us your question, feel free to type your question in the chat box in the lower right-hand navigation panel. If we to address all questions, we will send an email reply after the webinar. All participants are muted upon entry. If you would like to notify our team of any technical difficulties, please send us a message in the chat box. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on HUD Exchange shortly following the webinar. At the end of the webinar, please stay logged on for a few minutes to respond to a few questions. Immediately following the webinar, you will receive an invitation to complete a survey on today's webinar. I welcome you to complete the short survey and share any ideas you may have for future webinars. Dina and Kim will now introduce today's speakers. Are you there? Can you hear us? That's a few moments while we try to reach Dina. Okay, folks, we are having a little bit of technical difficulty, so I will go ahead and introduce our speakers today. Today, we have with us Jessica Zufolo, who is going to be talking about how to use the National Verifier System. Jessica is with the, one second. Jeff, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Jessica Zufolo. I'm the Senior Advisor here for the Federal Lifeline Program. So I'm really excited to be part of today's discussion with so many terrific people across the country who work with low-income recipients and people who are part of the HUD community nationwide. So thanks again. Really excited to be here. I want to start by telling you a little bit about who we are and give you a little bit of context for why I asked for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. I want to thank Dina Lehman-Kim for her leadership and collaborating with us for so many years to try to bring affordability to public housing nationwide. So the Universal Service Administered Company is a federal nonprofit, and on 4 talks, I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are. Quasi-government entity, similar to the structure of like Legal Services Corporation or a government-sponsored entity like Fannie. We administer $10 billion for the Federal Communications Commission nationwide to rural, underserved, and urbanized communities for internet and community access. the concept of universal service was established by Congress in 1996 to basically make sure that every American in all 56 states and territories and Native communities get access to affordable services comparable rates to those in urbanized areas, hence the concept of universal service. So a nonprofit that is designated by the FCC to administer 4 programs, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But we have about a $10 billion fund that we administer nationwide, and one of the funds we're going to talk about today with you, which is the Federal Lifeline program. So the universal service on slide 5 is, as I said, providing connectivity nationwide. And for the programs is the Connect America Fund, which is a $4.5 billion fund that provides subsidies to rural providers in rural and tribal areas to build out broadband. The Lifeline program is what you're going to talk about today, with a subsidy directly that goes to consumers, and one of the qualifying criteria is if they live in federal public housing facilities and receive federal public housing support. So this is a really important discussion for us to have with all of you today, which we have not had before. The Rural Care Program is a subsidy of about $500 million to basically designated for rural hospitals, for rural clinics to afford broadband access. And the School Libraries Program, known as the E-rate program, provides a discount to schools and libraries to afford broadband service in the school. 6 is an overview of what the subsidy is. It's a monthly discount on your phone or your internet service. It can be a bundle as well, mobile or fixed bundle. 9 million households in the program today, and roughly 274,000 are native. So what we've learned over the last several years is that the number of native consumers in this program are really shrinking, and we're trying to do more to close that gap. So we can talk about that down the road. The subsidy is a $9.25 subsidy off of your monthly bill. Basically how it works is that we will show you today how you qualify for the program, and what happens is if you're deemed eligible, the subsidy goes directly to the provider that you work with, and they discount your phone bill. If you live federally qualifying, federally recognized tribal lands, you receive up to $34.25 off of your monthly bill. So for those who live in tribal communities, the subsidy is far more really to recognize the enormous distance and density challenges in Native communities. Slide 6 is really just a depiction of the process. So what happens is the customer has to complete an application, which we'll talk about. They provide the documentation basically demonstrating that they are eligible. And then the customer then qualifies for the subsidy, and then they have to go out and select a company that can basically, provide them service. And what happens then is that the customer informs the provider that they are qualified, and then they can enroll in the discount. So that's kind of a high-level overview of how it works. Slide 8 is I'm going to tell a little bit about a new paradigm that we have been in the midst of deploying nationwide. So historically, since the start of this program, it was established under the Reagan administration in the early 1980s. And since the inception of this program, the phone companies were required and responsible for conducting all eligibility verification of all their customers. So I would apply for the Lifeline program. What happened was my phone company, Verizon or Sprint or whomever, SafeLink, TracFone, wouldn't check whether or not I'm eligible. And so that has been the historical process. In 2016, the FCC changed that and said, you know what, phone companies are no longer responsible and no longer should be in the business of verifying the customer. It's just not a good place. We want to make sure there's better integrity, there's stronger checks and balances. So what they did was they directed us at USAC, the Universal Service Administrative Company, to conduct all eligibility verification for all 9 million consumers. So when you look at the map of the United States, the states in blue are the states where our team here has established a way to verify the eligibility of every single consumer in that state. What that has looked like is what we've done is established computer matching agreements where we check the eligibility of the customer based on the way they, qualify, and I'll go over that in a second. And what we do is we check the databases of maybe SNAP, Medicaid, in the state to get a real-time response back from the database rather than waiting weeks, or sometimes it takes even longer mail. So this is a real-time check. We have built API connections through a number of these states. The states in gray, we have not been able to do that. So basically the current process is in place in these states where basically we have no visibility into whether or how the customer is, qualified. So what we end up doing is asking for paper documentation, and it's a very long and arduous process, and it's really a burden for the customer. So that's about the National Verifier, and it's really important. One of the key verification tools when we launched this in end of 2016 was we were established a very historic with the Department of Housing and Urban Development that allows us to ping through a real-time API connection to the public housing and Indian housing databases. So we have that now, and it's one of the most successful, agreements that we've had the pleasure of working on. And the folks in the REACT team within HUD have been outstanding. They are incredibly talented, dedicated public servants to improving business processes for public housing customers nationwide. Mine is the states where we've hard launched, meaning have a connection to the base of some kind, or we're checking eligibility verification in these states. This is not everybody. By the end of 2019, we are required by the FCC to connect and verify the eligibility of all 56 states and territories. So it's a massive undertaking, and our team here works day and night to make sure that we are establishing and opening doors in every state. This is an opportunity for all public housing advocates like all of you to help us, because the more we're able to get to collaborate with us, the better off we'll be to improve the eligibility verification. Right now, we're only able to check whether they're in public housing, but oftentimes we have consumers getting SNAP or Medicaid that may or not be in the HUD database. So we need to overlap all these federal eligibility criteria. So 10 is the way to use the Verify. So basically, you can apply through your phone company. Essentially, you can go to the phone company. The customer can go to them, and the carrier or the service provider will enter the customer's information into what we have as a consumer portal, which is available to every consumer or anybody publicly. And we would be thrilled to show you how that portal works. But essentially, it's a public-facing portal where the customer or the carrier can go in and just start trying to apply and really begin the process of getting the customer enrolled. We call the Companies Near Me tool. So if a consumer doesn't know who provides Lifeline discounts in their community, what they can do is go online and type in the Companies Near Me tool, which is on our website. We can make that available to all of you. And type in their address or their zip code, and it'll tell you all the companies that are in that community that provide Lifeline. Or if you don't have internet, which is most often the case in unserved, economically distressed areas, is apply by mail. We have an application form. We have a worksheet that I'll talk to you a little bit about, and then you have to prove your eligibility and your identity. So these rules are established by the FCC to really make sure that there is no fraud and there's no duplication of benefits that are issued. We have a customer service center that's open literally 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Sunday, and it's available all the time. We have agents that are available to answer tons of questions. We get close to 60 to 70,000 calls a month. So we're interested in this program, and that's why we're on the call today. So you apply with your carrier by mail, or as I failed to mention online, you can go to checklifeline.org. You can go to the library. You can use a computer kiosk wherever it's available, or you can on your phone and check as well. But make sure we're covering all the bases as to how customers can access the application portal. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can apply online, which I think is just a good way. On 12 this is basically the landing page. So go to checklifeline.org/lifeline, and you can type in on the left-hand side where you live. So let's say you live in California or Virginia or Illinois. You put it right here, and you press Get Started. So I think these slides will be available to you, and then you can use this as a reference guide. On slide 13 is the basics. So you need to, in the consumer portal, you establish an account, essentially. First name, last name, middle name. You must put in your date of birth to move to the next screen. And then we're going to talk on slide 15 on the supporting documentation. So, important slide because it shows the common errors that we see with applicants. So specifically, if the customer receives any of these errors, this is how you can resolve it. So the address matching service error is just that may come up if you are not able to verify the address of where you're located. And so what the documentation that you'd need to move past that error is just any address documentation where you live. In addition to that, you can also, if let's say you live in a community, I think all of you have obviously addresses, so it's not as challenging, but for native consumers that have no addresses, they can actually, or a host consumer, what they can do is they can put into one of the addressing page, like I live underneath this bridge, or I live really close to this highway, or I live in a tent near this place. You can actually write that down, and that is eligible. If there's a duplicate address, there's a good address flow that can really help you kind of that. If you're under 18, you have to show your proof of emancipated minor status. The third-party identification, identity verification error is basically it can't pick up. The system is not able to see whether or not your identity is difficult to identify. So you'd have to provide some proof of identity, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And program eligibility is, just how you qualify. So Medicaid, supplemental security income, federal public housing, and then we have a number of tribal specific eligibility criteria that can also be used to qualify for this program. So a number of ways to do that. So in terms of if they cannot recognize your address. So now we're going to go into some details here. So let's say you're an applicant and you type in an address and the system cannot identify it. What you can do here is you can use this mapping tool, and say you kind of know where you live. So let's say you live somewhere in rural Nevada. So you can take a pin, drop it where you think you live, and it'll populate the lat long automatically. And that helps us move. It helps you move through, and you press next. In terms of program eligibility, let's say you select a program, then you have to provide. So on the left-hand side, let's say you're qualifying, and you say, qualify for the Lifeline program because I received SNAP programs. It doesn't have to be all of them. It doesn't have to be 3 of them. It can just one. You don't qualify for all. That's the important piece, because sometimes people are like, oh, wow, I look at this list and I have to fill it all out. No, just one. So Medicaid, supplemental security income, federal public housing assistance, the V pension, and Survivors Program, with the key areas of eligibility for the Lifeline subsidy. When you click that, the next slide, the next prompt comes up on the right, which is how you need to prove to us how. So you have to show us an approved letter, or benefit statement letter, or a vacation letter, something, and that can be easily uploaded here. And that is how we start really building the consumer's record for how we can really verify them easily and quickly. So this is where you upload the documents. So you have to do it. You can upload those also with your phone and or PDF files. Now we're going to talk really quickly about the paper application, which is what this is what it looks like on the right-hand side of the page. You have to fill out everything. Please use black ink and capital letters. And the required fields are your name, address, whether the address is permanent or temporary, or if you have a billing address, if it's different, as well as your last 4 digits of your social or your tribal ID number. That is critical for us to have that to move your application through the process. On the third page of the of the application is that you have to show how you qualify. So here's where you check off SI, Medicaid, public housing, SNAP, it's right here. If you're a Native consumer and live on tribal lands, these are the criteria you can also qualify for. via general assistance, tribal Head Start, or the distribution program, which is the program that's used in lieu of SNAP in Indian country. Or as you can see, you can qualify by showing income. So the below is based on 135% of the federal poverty highlights. Now that's not a lot, right? Most states are well above that. Probably everybody is. But the rules are set by the FCC, so this is sort of a baseline. So if the customer doesn't feel like that works for them, then they should certainly have the option and be able to demonstrate based on the eligibility program above. Consumers can mail their application here to our Kentucky support center address. I would say take a picture of this, make sure you have it. It's really important. This is the support center 1-800 number. The eligibility decision as to whether or not you qualify is between 7 to 10 days. And so that's for a paper application that you mail in. Some tips on slide 23 I wanted to share with you is if the consumer has access to email, please use it. Again, these are consumers that may not have email, but please, think about ways to accelerate the process because we want these consumers to know quickly because they're distressed, economically challenged people that need support. So we're open and ready and willing to help them in any way we can. Also, when they submit their documents, have their eligibility documents, identity documents, the one per household worksheet, which I've got as well. That'll have to be in the packet, so please make sure. And the household worksheet is on our lifelinesupport.org website, so you can just fill those out. Now, how it helps. So we want to talk very briefly about how to manage your benefits. So the reunification process is very similar to other federal programs where you have to confirm that you're eligible. And typically, this is like a, self-certification process. So you have to actually certify, yes, I am eligible for this program, then you continue for the benefits and be maintained. And that's key because if they don't do it, then we cannot continue to distribute this support. Non-usage is really, really important. You must use your phone. You must use the subsidy. If you do not, chances are we are notified that the plan is idle and nothing's happening. And really important for your customers, for your residents to use your phone. We are notified that it's just not being used, and if it's not being used, the subsidy could be used for somebody else. So please encourage folks to use the phone, use account, because idle accounts tend to get, if service is not being used at least once every 30 days, we are notified, and then it triggers kind of an inquiry. Address updates, the customer must inform their phone company if they move or change, really important. And if they're not happy with their carrier, which is, and it's important that the customer knows they have choice, that they can switch to a different company by reapplying through the verifier, and we can help them through that process. This are here. So again, I want to call your attention to the 100 number, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I said a.m., sorry. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. East Standard Time, Monday through Sunday. Our call center agents get, like I said, thousands of questions and thousands of calls every day. So we want people to feel comfortable calling, asking questions. Use it. And our website is lifelinesupport.org, which has all the information. We have videos on how to apply. We have page summaries. I would encourage all the public housing advocates and public housing leaders on the call, if you can, just print out the one-pager, print out the consumer instructions, and post them somewhere so people can see them, because we just want people to know and use the subsidy. So it's very important. Now, that concludes my discussion. What I realized my slides didn't have is how the one per household worksheet works, which I don't really know why that's not here. But what I wanted to tell you is a key requirement of this program is that when your eligibility goes to one entity who qualifies for household. So, for example, if you are an economic household of family and your expenses, only person in that family gets the subsidy. However, if you live in a public housing building, or if you live in a homeless shelter, or if you live at a senior center, or that is a group type of living arrangement, or if you're in a roommate situation and you're not sharing expenses, then that one household requirement does not apply. So repeat, this is important because we've learned that the phone companies have confused this for a lot of Lifeline customers, that the customer basically self-certifies that they are that they do not share living expenses. We honor that because we want to make sure that other people in that household are getting the subsidy because they qualify, because they're not sharing expenses. So the one per household worksheet just allows you, and it's on our website, to explain or just provide a little bit more, clarity on indeed you do not share expenses with the other people in your house, and let's say we're roommates and we are, I have my expenses, you have your expenses, even though we might be sharing the same roof, or we're, paying rent together. That doesn't matter. It just matters if you are sharing, a variety of living expenses, and the details are on the one per household worksheet. That, I think, is important to really stress for everybody. And I really want to just reiterate the need for the public housing leaders on this call to help me get this information out there, because what I've learned is that I don't know about this program, which is shocking. It's a $2.25 billion program, and they're not getting subsidy, and they qualify for it. So we want people to use it. We want people to apply for it, and and I just wanted to have the opportunity to chat with all of you about how beneficial the subsidy is for every public housing resident, and help them just get more tools to enhance their quality of life. So with that, I can turn it over to Heather, who is a Director of Resident Services in Kansas.
Dina, I'm finally able to call in. Can you hear me?
Nah.
Oh, good. Sorry, I apologize for the technical difficulty earlier, and I want to thank Jessica so much for her leadership and her partnership over the years. I also wanted to say that we're very excited to be able to bring this topic to this audience because it's such an important resource, as Jessica, you have said throughout your wonderful presentation. And so open this up to PHAs that are outside of the Connect Home USA family on purpose because we want to spread this information. And as Jessica said, we certainly would appreciate you sharing this information with your other PHA colleagues, either in-house or, across the country, anyone that you may know. And so with that, I would like to now turn it over to Heather, but let me first introduce her. Heather McNeve is the Director of Resident Services for the Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority. She receives the Ross Service Coordinator and Family Self-Sufficiency Programs. As the lead on the Housing Authority's Connect Home USA program, Heather is passionate about connecting clients to the internet and technology resources. So Heather, with that, take it away.
Oh, Dina, and thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. As Jessica so eloquently put it and how Dina introduced me, I am really excited about this program. I've been with the Housing Authority here in Lawrence for 8 years, and in my 8 years, I have seen a lot of clients access the Lifeline benefit, and I've really seen how it's changed lives. So that's kind of how I got really excited about Connect Home and the Connect Home program. So, I would like to start a little bit by explaining. I don't want to go over too much of what Jessica touched on, but really emphasizing that cell phone or broadband internet or home phone in the household. I have had a lot of confusion working with my public housing and Section 8 clients that they'll come in and they're really excited about this low-cost internet option they've been hearing about, and then I'm kind of like questioning them, do you have a government phone or a Lifeline phone already? And they know, and then we'll do the application. Turns out they already have the benefit in the form of a cell phone. So there is a little bit of confusion on the client's part. So I really do spend a lot of time really sorting that out and asking the relevant questions to make sure that it's not something that's going to, you're going to use their time and energy, really just kind of getting to the heart of it. And so one of the things about my local jurisdiction was that within the last couple of years, we had a new company come in that bought out the local company. So our regional provider is called Midco, and they started offering the internet broadband option in Lawrence, which was huge because previously it was a small company and they only offered a home phone option. So when Midco came in, we were really excited that they were a larger company and they offered the broadband internet Lifeline benefit. So as Jessica mentioned, the website there, there's a link to it and there's also a screen capture. You can really find what companies provide Lifeline benefits in your area really easily on their website. So I do encourage everybody to go there and see what companies are available to work with. Office provides application assistance directly to our public housing and Section 8 tenants. We really do encourage the online option. It is so much faster. And then you can upload or fax in the required benefit eligibility information pretty quickly, so it's much easier. But if that's not an option, putting it in, putting it in, and it really depends on, again, what your regional or local provider is offering. Okay, I wanted to share just a little bit more about my experience working with clients and some of the common problems that I've seen. On some of the applications, they'll ask the client to select PIN and have to remember what that PIN is so that they can reference back to their application at a later date. Sometimes they can't remember the PIN. Will keep a copy of their application in their file just so that if I need to refer back to it, if they do run into a problem, so they can access that again. Sometimes that's unique to the provider. Frequently, if they're sending in a handwritten application or mailing it in or faxing, I have seen applications come back rejected because they cannot read the handwriting on the application. So that would be a tip that I would give you guys. Just make sure that they're using their clearest handwriting, or, can allow my staff to write it in for them under their supervision. On the fourth section of the application, the clients do have to initial all the policies, which is just basically that they're not receiving a duplicate benefit, that they're eligible based on their participation in the programs. They can't initial the top and then draw a line down. Frequently they'll try to do that. You can't do that. They'll fail to submit the required supporting documentation, so usually make sure we have that before we start the application just so it's ready to go. They are already receiving a Lifeline benefit through another provider in their household, so maybe I'm speaking to one adult in the household about internet and they don't realize that their partner or the other adult in the household's phone service is a government phone. Frequently that's the terminology, government phone. They didn't respond to follow-up attempts for additional information, so they will get something in the mail or an email asking for clarification on something, or if need that additional documentation. If they don't respond, they have to reapply totally, and sometimes that can, that setback can seem daunting, but if you keep a copy of the application in their file, if you're able to do that, you can just change the dates on it, that sort of thing. As Jessica mentioned, there is an annual recertification requirement. Sometimes a client will fail to respond to that and have their phone cut off or their internet service cut off. The providers in my area do a really good job of communicating this, but it does come by mail, and they got to open their mail, which sometimes they don't. For cell phones, too, I would really advise send a text, make a call, or go online at least once a month. Jessica mentioned that. I do have a lot of elderly tenants that want the cell phone option for safety, but maybe they usually rely on their home phone, so they don't use the cell phone except for emergencies, and then they get cut off and they have to go about reapplying. So that can cause some frustration from the client's perspective. And then my last sort of problem or tip that I would say is watch out for scams. There is a lot of rumor and misinformation on the internet and by word of mouth about what government phone is, how they apply. Just a quick example, I had a client that came in and he is primarily speaks Spanish, and he got some text through his phone about, well, how do you apply for a government phone? Just send us your social and your date of birth, and he was sure, so he texts back this random number, his social and his date of birth. So it kind of caused a bigger problem. We had to do some identity theft prevention issues and put a freeze on his account and other things. But there are a lot of scams and misinformation on the internet about what Lifeline is and what the government phone is. And then just some stories. This is a quote that one of my clients told me when we got them connected to the Lifeline internet program in their home. Just what a huge relief it is to have that internet service in their home. Another example, I have an elderly veteran who qualified because he was a veteran, but also because he was in Section 8 housing, and he was that one that failed to turn in his recertification, and he also didn't always use it every day. So, but he relies heavily on that cell phone for safety, to be able to call an ambulance, call 911 if there's an emergency. Having that connection is so huge. And then in our local jurisdiction, our school district provides devices, technology devices for children to be able to take home and do their homework. They provide iPads, but they do not provide internet. So it's really critical for our low-income families to be able to have that internet service at home so that their children are able to do their homework, do their research, complete their projects. Here in Lawrence, we are moving to work agency, and we have a work requirement for our folks. So being able to assist job seekers and students with homework and with their employment applications is critical. So I guess another piece of advice that I would offer housing authorities is really develop a relationship with your local providers. Like I mentioned, Midco is our local provider. I found that a lot of our clients were getting denied because I was sending in public leases as proof that they were public housing tenants and therefore eligible for the benefit. They didn't know how to read my lease or what that meant. So what I did was I called up the company and I spoke to one of their representatives, and I spoke to the manager, and I developed a relationship with them about what it means to be in public housing in Douglas County, Kansas, and what that looks like. Developed that relationship there with a local provider. They also ended up giving me a grant to buy some computers for my tenants, so that relationship paid off in more than one way. And also still found that there are getting, some of us are still getting denied based on the applications we sent in. So I started writing an advocacy letter, like, to whom it may concern, this person is a public housing tenant in good standing, therefore they're eligible for the Lifeline benefit. So those are just a couple of examples. And then one of the things that we started doing was including an application in our new tenant orientation packets. I would really encourage you to do that. A lot of times new tenants are moving into public housing or getting their voucher. They're overwhelmed by the process, right? So being able to just slip that application in just so you know you're not eligible for this great program that's going to help you connect to the internet or cell phone or home phone. I found that was a really good thing. So even if they didn't do it in the moment, they came back later and said, I would like to get some help applying for the internet option. So yeah, those are kind of my tips and my advice on how to help public housing and Section 8 tenants connect to the Lifeline benefit program. That really concludes my section of the program. I can hand it back over to Janelle or Dina to do the Q&A section.
Thank you, Dina. I'll pass it over to Janelle for the Q&A. Sorry. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Alrighty, just as a quick reminder, you may ask questions in two ways. In the right-hand navigation panel, you will see a hand-shaped icon. If you would like to verbally share your question, just select the hand icon and I'll unmute your line. And we'll ask those questions in order they're received. Or if you'd like to send us your question, feel free to type your question in the chat box in the lower right-hand navigation panel. I will read your question out loud in the order we receive them. Again, if we're not able to answer all questions during the webinar, we will reply afterwards. We have received a couple of questions during the course of the webinar. The first question is the Lifeline program available to Section 8 voucher holders or just public housing?
Do you want to take that one?
Yes, my phone was on mute. Thank you so much. Yes, this is Jessica from the Lifeline program, and if I understand your question correctly, you're trying to understand whether or not the Lifeline benefit is just for Section 8. It is for all federal public housing benefits. So it's not just Section 8. It includes all federal, especially rental assistance. So the HUD, OGC sort of clarified that for me, not just Section 8. A couple years ago, actually prior to 2016, it was just Section 8, but it's for all federal public housing support.
I would add to that the section of the application asks if you participate in federal public housing assistance, so there is a little bit of confusion around that I have had to clear up. Voucher holders are absolutely eligible, and the supporting documentation for that is I've been sending in a copy of their voucher, but then again, sometimes the provider doesn't know what a voucher is. The company doesn't know what a voucher is, so I've also submitted those letters of advocacy that I recommended, just to whom it may concern. They're a Section 8 tenant in good standing. If you have any questions, contact me. Usually that does the trick. Great question.
All right, we read another question that says, is Lifeline available in Oklahoma yet?
It's available nationwide, so it's available in every single state and territory. It does not restrict anywhere. If your question is whether or not Oklahoma has participated or been rolled into the Lifeline National Verifier, where we can verify the applicant in seconds, we have not had a chance. We have been successful in getting the Oklahoma Department of Human Services that administers SNAP and Medicaid to collaborate with us to establish a computer matching agreement to enable us to verify the customer in real time by seeing them against a credible data source like theirs. We've had a lot of challenges there. If you have any connections, if you have any you want to help me, go for it. You can always email me separately, and I would be very excited to have any help to get Oklahoma into the verifier.
Thank you. Our next question that we receive is a clarifying question. And it says, is it a discount of $9.25 per month, not a total bill of $9.25 per month, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
My colleague's going to explain that a little bit further, and my colleague manages part of the call center. So, Kelly?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I also just want to help clarify that as well. So, service providers are also able to provide a benefit how they see fit. So, while we approve a disbursement for $9.25 per subscriber, qualified subscriber, they may decide to offer a free phone or a certain package as a part of their Lifeline offering, but that may change from service provider to service provider. So I do just want to offer that up for our consumers to search around and look for different Lifeline providers, as they do have different options.
Definitely, the customer should see part of the goal of the Lifeline National Verifier is really to empower the customer to be able to pick and choose the care that they think is the best one for their business, for the enrollment, and ultimately we hope to get to a place where income consumers is a consumer population that the phone companies compete for because they want to serve them.
I would throw in an example here. So in my jurisdiction, our local provider, Midco, provides, if they choose the internet option, they provide a router, and it's $6 a month, 250 megabits, which is dang fast. So it works out pretty well. It's part of why I was so happy when Midco came in. It depends on the provider in your jurisdiction.
Great, thank you. Next question is the Lifeline benefit the same as the AT&T Access and the Spectrum Assist Internet program?
Hi, this is Leah Srini with the Lifeline program. So I just wanted to clarify that sometimes phone internet companies have their own individual programs completely unrelated to the Lifeline program. They just offer their own discounts, and it's not a federal benefit. So that can be different than the Lifeline program. However, sometimes phone and internet companies will also market the Lifeline benefit as just a benefit that they offer, so we can understand that can get a little confusing, but the two programs that you mentioned are specific to those companies.
Yeah, that's right. So let me just add to what my colleague Leah said. So there's two types of ways to think about this. There are large companies. I believe Comcast has what is known as the Internet Essentials program. That's not part of the Lifeline program. We've encouraged Comcast to participate, but they're not interested in participating in a government program that subsidizes the customer. So they have their own discount offering. It is not within this program at all. It's a separate, their own thing. The AT&T program you're referring to is the same type of model. Then companies like TracFone and others that basically have developed a product like that is branded like SafeLink or Boost Mobile, and they are a low-income based service offering with a package of minutes, and they also provide a free handset. And it is basically we provide the subsidy to the provider, the eligibility of the customer, and then they market it as their own service. So anyway, it's because sometimes I'll take the bus in Washington, D.C., and I'll see ads for pre-phone service offerings, but it's really the Lifeline. It's the life discount. So I make you guys savvy about that.
Okay, and the next question we have is how can housing authorities in a state where it's not yet launched advocate for it? And I believe they're talking about the National Verifier.
Oh, absolutely. Call me. I can help you, talk to you. I need your help. Part of the reason why this call was so helpful to me are so priority, to be honest with you, to speak to all of you, is because you're such critical, advocates and really important stakeholders in this entire process and this entire effort, because you're dealing with the same customers. We touch collectively the same customers. So please reach out to me if you can. I would be so grateful. I can talk to you about what's going on, what the barriers, what kind of challenges we've had with getting the verifier launched in your state. I can go really deep down in the weeds. So you can always email me at jessica.zufolo@usac.org, and it's ZUF as in Frank, OLO.
Hey, thank you, Jessica. And just as a reminder, we will share the slide presentation following the webinar, and I will include Jessica's information as well as Heather's if you have any follow-up questions for the two of them. Okay. The next question we received, two questions about slide presentations. Again, those will be uploaded on HUD Exchange as well. The question is, what is the average monthly cost for the Lifeline?
There is no, so let me explain what that is. Let me help clarify. So the providers that provide internet, both fixed and mobile, they set pricing. The Lifeline program is a subsidy that discounts the bill. So we don't set prices. We don't set the prices of the service offerings out in the market. It's just a subsidy that goes directly to discount the customer bill. So the answer to your question is we don't set those prices. The market just sets those prices set by the companies themselves.
The next question received is asking, can a tenant have only one service, cell phone or internet or home phone?
The customer mainly, it only goes to one service. You can't have a Lifeline discount off your cell phone bill, off your internet. You just can't do that. It's one service. Well, it depends on. My colleague is correcting me. Go ahead.
So it also kind of goes back to that same point that we were talking about earlier. It depends upon the service provider. Some service providers do offer what we call a bundled package. So some service providers can provide what we call voice, which is just your traditional either handset wireless or landline wireline service, and they combine that with a broadband service. So we would encourage consumers to go talk to different service providers, Lifeline service providers, because they have different offerings. So it just depends upon each service provider to answer that question correctly.
But Kate, is it true that the subsidy only goes towards one service offering? In other words, it could be a bundled service offering, but you can have your smartphone that has minutes, voice minutes, and data, but you also have that and home internet.
Yes.
I think that's what the question of.
Oh, I'm sorry. I understood the question wrong. So I think that question then points back to just the overall point that one person can only have one benefit. And so to Jessica's point, at that point, regardless of it's a bundle package or not, we're counting it as one benefit.
And those are rules set by the FCC, so we didn't, those are rules we just administer here.
So this, can I maybe clarify a little bit? If it has a bundled package, and let's pretend it costs $20, and through the bundle they get home internet, a line, and a cell phone, the line subsidy would cover $9.25 for the whole bill. Is that correct?
I think so.
So to answer that question, how much that service provider or that consumer may pay for that package is dependent on the service provider. What then happens on our end is that we see that that consumer is enrolled with, let's call it ABC Telecom Company, and they're a qualified subscriber. We then disperse $9.25 for benefit to the service provider. So to disperse that, the consumer may receive $9.25 against their bill, but ultimately it's actually seen at the service provider. Does that kind of help clarify?
That it's seen by the service provider?
So,
yeah.
As we were talking earlier, the service providers can provide different offerings. That may be different prices, that may be some kind of free device or something that may be different. So we don't want to give you specifics about how a consumer may actually receive their benefit. And what happens is that the service provider then receives a disbursement of $9.25 based on this consumer being qualified.
So do you have an example?
So if we do use that example, the consumer goes into, I believe Assurance provides, and don't quote me on this, Assurance, I understand, provides a free handset. That's how they're offering. So typically a handset's going to cost more than $9.25 for, and I mean a handset meaning a cell phone, typically costs more than $9.25. So in case the consumer doesn't necessarily see $9.25 because they get a free phone and then they get minutes.
And they get a discount. They get a discounted bill.
Yes. However, when it comes between Assurance and USAC, we see the consumer, it's issued this qualified consumer Lifeline discount. We then will account $9.25 to the service provider monthly based upon their qualification.
Right, and so just to go back to what you just said, Dina, I mean, typically the subsidy goes towards, like, you have it multiple times in the house, right? So in other words, you can't have multiple people getting it in the same economic household, and it can't go for your cell phone or home internet. That's considered two different services.
Right.
That's just these rules are so, like, I'm not aware of a cell phone bundle that includes home internet. But I don't know, I'm not aware of it. And if it is, talk to the phone company, see what they're doing, right? I mean, that's kind of how the rules work.
Yes. We strongly encourage consumers to talk to the service providers to see how they offer.
And a question in the chat, is it correct that this program provides a discount for services and does not provide it? So when speaking, and that's from Tammy Phillips, and if device means a phone or handset, we do not, the subsidy only goes for the service. Now, as Kelly just mentioned, what carriers end up doing is, you know, Sam's Club or at Walmart, what they'll do is they'll give you a bundle of minutes with phone for $9.25 a month. But the subsidy does not cover the cost of the phone, only for the reoccurring monthly service. Help.
Yeah. So we have quite a few more questions, and I think we have time for one more. So if we did not get to your question today, again, we will send an email reply following the webinar. But the last question we're going to take today is that, is there a way to find service providers in my area without enrolling in the program? I can't seem to do so on the site.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, so did you finish the question?
No. The last part was just letting you guys know that the Get Started button doesn't seem to be working.
Are you, is the consumer actually in the national verifier and then trying to apply versus going to the website? Because consumers are able to go to Lifeline support.org, and there is the same tool. It actually is referenced in the portal. There's a link there, but it's not within the application process. So if you're just interested looking to see who's in your area, maybe potentially to apply, you certainly can do that. So we encourage consumers to go to Lifeline support.org, to the Find Companies Near Me tool from the left-hand side. They can do that at any point. They also can call our Lifeline Support Center, and they're happy to help find service providers in the area.
reiterate, go to the Lifeline, go to the Companies Near Me tool on the website and just type in your zip code. I'll give you a list of everybody.
So we will send out a reply for all the remaining questions. Dina, did you have anything else you want to say before ending the session today?
Just to thank our wonderful speakers, Jessica, Heather, and Jessica's team. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this for us today. And thank you to our Housing Authority communities and staff for being on today. And we will follow up, as Janelle said, with any other questions that remain unanswered. Thank you, everyone.
And we can do another webinar whenever you feel that it's, you know, we can do more.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thanks everybody.
You have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.